Right now, score streaks do not loop, but we really want to avoid score streak spam. That's something I personally just really don't like. I know a lot of players don't like it.
You know, guys, one of the things that I really dislike about the modern era Call of Duty developers is just how many of them have a particular quote-unquote vision for what they want their game to play like. Now, this isn't necessarily wrong, but ever since Infinity Ward mentioned the word quote-unquote vision, I've just had some severe PTSD because when Infinity Ward mentions vision, they usually mean it in the way that they as developers want to keep something a certain way, and if you dislike it, if you're part of the large majority in the community that is opposed to it and wants something different or wants some sort of accommodation or compensation, you just want to meet in the middle about something, their vision usually triumphs the community's feedback. And unfortunately, guys, we have the exact same thing going on, unfortunately, with Treyarch. Now, this is actually like god-awful news in my opinion because Black Ops Cold War should cease to exist, alright? I'm just gonna pretend that game never happened. And I know that might come as a shocker to a lot of people. A lot of people might be upset with the Scabmaster, but truth be told, I don't really care. I believe it is Treyarch's weakest game to date, and a lot of that you can attribute to Activision and the incompetence of Sledgehammer Games and Raven. If you know, you know. But there's certain things about that game that do come down to Treyarch, and one of those things was not having loopable streaks, and actually, well, their entire streak system was just god-awful to begin with, but that was just the cherry on top. Now guys, for whatever ungodly reason, Treyarch wants to run that back here in Black Ops 6. This comes out from Charlie Intel. He says, Black Ops 6 will not allow players to loop score streaks. Black Ops 6 features the traditional score streak system with streaks resetting after every life, unlike Cold War. But this is the thing. It's not necessarily that, they don't have loopable streaks just by design, and they're maybe willing to change some things based off of feedback. This actually comes down to the developer's feelings. Now, I don't know if I can actually play this clip, but it's pretty surprising what this developer has to say about this.
Right now, score streaks do not loop. That was something we've talked about quite a bit, and really the goal there is we want to reward players in a single life fairly with high-end rewards or low-end, depending on your selection. But we really want to avoid score streak spam. That's something I personally just really don't like. I know a lot of players don't like it.
So there's two key things about this clip, and I don't know if some of this is taken out of context. This is coming out of their new podcast called the COD Podcast or the COD Pod. I don't know anymore, guys. I mean, it sounds like utter filth. I mean, to be completely honest, I'd rather eat Lizzo's queef than watch this. But look, there's two very important things that he mentions in this clip. One, just the idea of rewarding certain players. And I'm going to get back to that in just a second. But the other thing that he mentions is that it's his personal feeling. And that is something that you should genuinely remove whenever you're creating anything. Honestly, like especially if you're creating something that other people will be consuming, and this is supposed to be some sort of live service game and you spent 4 whole years on it, maybe not the best thing to let feelings interfere with decision-making skills and overall designs within the game. Like, if this is genuinely how you feel, I don't know if you should be developing a game like Call of Duty where the community, as of late at least, has been extremely outspoken and we have a lot of differing opinions here. Your feelings as a developer should not interfere with any sort of design that has existed in Call of Duty for over like a decade and a half. And you remember when these Treyarch developers were talking about, oh, this is the best Black Ops game we've ever created. Then yeah, that sounds about right, because if Black Ops Cold War was your first game developing, then the first day you showed up to the job and you walk in, this was probably your coworker.
Codman! Yeah!
Now, I do want to talk about this whole thing about rewarding certain players because this is also just inaccurate in my opinion. But to better explain this, this comes out from the Ghost of Hope. He says, L. The amount of people who can actually loop their streaks in a single life is likely very small, especially with the addition of skill-based matchmaking, by the way. It was a core part of why Black Ops 2 score streaks were so good. The fact he mentions personal feelings just means we're never getting it regardless of feedback, sadly. Then this Call of Duty gooch licker responds, his name is Call of Bozo, he says, "Why is this an L? How would loop score streaks ever be a good thing?" And the Ghost of Hope responds saying, "We literally had it in most CODs since BO2. The only reason they removed it is to cater to bad players." Which is facts. Then this bozo comes back talking about, "You literally said that very few players built up enough of a streak to loop in the first place, so what difference does it make? It's a weird thing to get hung up on, I'll be honest." And the Ghost of Hope says, "Because rewarding good players with certain mechanics is good game design, and there's no real downsides to letting players want to get better at the game." And in typical MW 2019 gooch-licking, skill-based matchmaking loving fashion, somebody who has no idea about how the landscape of skill has drastically changed between Black Ops 2 and the golden era of CODs to the dark ages of CODs starting with MW 2019. The guy says, "All this does is reward good players only. It doesn't help less skilled players at all. If you're an average player in a game and a chopper gunner is getting spammed, then there's only one thing you're going to do, and that's leave." And guys, if we're at a point where we're saying that developers should not cater their game development towards rewarding players that are actually good at the game, which incentivizes bad players to get better, then I think all hope is lost with Call of Duty, with Black Ops 6, with these developers, and with the community. We've gotten to such a pathetic point where, yes, I understand if you suck and that there's so many chopper gunners in the sky because, once again, you suck, you might feel the need to leave the game. But guess what? What is the issue with that? We leave the game based off of cheaters already, so why don't we eliminate cheaters to prevent us from leaving the game? How about that? Why don't we focus on something like that? You're against people leaving the lobby, then how about this? Why don't you work on your servers, because that makes people leave the lobbies too. Why don't you work on all of this unprovoked skill-based matchmaking and EOMM, all of this nasty, cringy, predatory matchmaking that caters to children to buy these ridiculous skins in the shop to promote your pedophilia, alright? Why don't we focus on that? Because when I see nasty, disgusting losers in the lobby, I'm gonna smoke them, I'm gonna shoot their body, and out of spite, I'm gonna leave the game because I know they're never gonna get their lick back, alright? Why don't we focus on that? Why don't we focus on taking care of these cheaters and hackers? Because when I see them in the lobby, am I not provoked to leave the game as well? Oh, but chopper gunners in the sky as a score streak because somebody earned them by playing the objective and getting kills, something that actually exemplifies your skill. Oh, that's where we draw the line. Alright. You guys see when there's nonsense from these developers and all these other people in the community, all these gooch lickers, that's when you get people like the Scat Master out. So if you're tired of me complaining and ranting and talking smack about these people, why don't you get mad at them for provoking somebody who actually uses common sense? Why not that? Why don't we get upset at the people who are stupid enough to believe any of this crap that this guy's talking about? Why are we catering to good players? What? I beg your pardon? Guys, a decision like this from Treyarch caters to who? Let's be honest, who does it cater to? It caters to terrible players who don't earn score streaks. It's the same philosophy as to why we don't show the deaths on the scoreboard anymore throughout the game. Because you don't want bad players to feel bad. Because if they feel bad, they're gonna stop spending in the shop. Because they're gonna get off the game. Instead of promoting and catering these players to get better, you are actively giving them training wheels every single multiplayer experience so that they spend more in the shop. I don't care if it's Infinity Ward, I don't care if it's Sledgehammer. Obviously now we have Treyarch doing it too. If you cater your game to bad players with the sole objective of getting more money out of it in the long run, anywhere down the line, you are complicit in the downfall of Call of Duty. Treyarch Studios, I am deeply disappointed in your decision to do this, especially if you have quote-unquote feelings behind it. What it sounds like is you feel like you guys want more money out of it. That's what your feelings sound like. They don't seem genuine at all, because if they were genuine, then you would understand how much common sense it takes to realize that rewarding people who play the objective and get kills and slay out and actually exemplify their skill, that is how you promote others to do better. Because if they're stuck sucking at the game and they never get out of that slump because they're being overprotected, then you're never gonna have an organic community. What you're gonna have is a division between good players that feel like they're getting nothing out of this game, so they're gonna stop playing, And bad players who are spending money in your shop, they're not actually getting a Call of Duty experience. They're getting a Battle Pass experience. They're getting a bundle microtransaction experience in the shop experience. What I don't understand is, if you want more people to spend in the shop, then you should cater to the overall population of your game's life cycle. If everybody is happy in your game because you're making correct design choices, then everybody's more likely to spend money in the game. But if you're constantly cucking good players, and you're constantly holding the hands of the terrible players, then majority of the terrible players are the ones that are going to be spending money in your shop, and thus you might be losing money by doing that. Now obviously they have their own data to determine any of this stuff that I'm talking about, but I'm talking as one of the voices in the community right now. I guarantee you there's a lot of people that completely agree with the Scatmaster in what I'm saying. When you make these types of choices and you're catering to bad players, all it does is give us PTSD to MW 2019 and what started this entire concoction of catering to terrible players and no longer having the correct Call of Duty identity that you've had for over 2 decades. And it also gives us PTSD when we think about things like MW 2019 Part 2, because when Infinity Ward had their vision and they had all of their feelings input into it, then all community feedback goes out the window. You want easy feedback? Here it is. We don't want this. Undo it. We want loopable score streaks. It makes the gameplay more enjoyable. If you suck, you will strive to get better and you will have a better experience because you will no longer suck.
Now listen! That's called motherfucking bars, nigga! You know nothing about that!
If you're good, you will be rewarded, and that feels good. That keeps us playing the game. That is the simplest feedback you could ever get on this decision. But guess what? The way these developers are talking, and the way that Call of Duty has gone for the last 6 years, it sounds like feedback's really not the priority anymore. It's about money, it's about these agendas, it's about the quotas, it's about these developers' feelings and their visions for how they want Call of Duty to be. God forbid you have a voice and you want to give some feedback. Not only are these developers not going to listen, but the people listening are some of these gooch lickers that would fold themselves like a pretzel for Activision and Bobby Cosby. He's not even here anymore. We have him in a pack on Epstein Island. And you still want to eat his taint from the back. Just a bunch of tomfoolery and a whole lot of malarkey if you ask me. If you ask the Scatmaster, some of these people don't really deserve human rights. When we talk about human rights, people want to call me a... Let me stop. Look guys, the point I am trying to make is all of this sounds extremely disappointing. It seems like the community is not actually going to have their voices heard for like the 7th year in a row. It sounds like Treyarch has unfortunately been influenced by Infinity Ward, and I don't know. You know, David Vonderhaar is no longer here. We have this bald guy talking in place of him. I personally prefer the last bald guy. I don't know about this guy. He could be a totally nice person, but when he has his feelings into it too much, I think this is to the detriment of Call of Duty and multiplayer experiences, especially when it's going to influence the design choices that goes into the game. Now guys, there's other news to be talked about with Black Ops 6 and this whole thing with Omni movement, but we're not going to get to that in today's video. We're going to have to talk about that at a separate time. And just to give you a little teaser, a little hint as to what that video would look like, let me just ask you something. Where do you think I'm going with all of this? I mean, Call of Duty just announced this whole thing with the open beta, and a beta that you can access without pre-ordering. If you're trying to pick the Scatmaster's brain, all I'm gonna say is, it sounds like maybe the community should not be doing a certain thing, and wait to try some of these design choices in-game, in the beta, before you make a decision as to whether or not you want to spend another $70 for the potential of the developers not listening to you once again. But that's gonna do it for me today, guys. I'm curious to know what you guys think about all this. Do you think these developers are making the right move with catering to terrible players once again? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notifications to stay up to date with my newest videos, and yeah guys, it's been the boy Fooly. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out of here. Toodles.